Okay, welcome back to the Investigative Journal on this June 20th, 2016 day on our calendar. I'm your host, Greg Anthony. You're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com. You can listen to my show every evening at Pacific time on First Amendment Radio from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. They also replay the show at 11 a.m. On the next day. And if you can't get that, go to my website at arcticbeacon.com. My guest today is Bert Krantz of the Alamo Ministry, and oh boy, it's 2016, about 8 years ago. The Alamo Christian Bible-believing ministry was raided by FBI SWAT teams carrying machine guns, assault rifles. Now, my point today is looking back at just what happened in Orlando. What they want to do is take away guns from Americans. I would say fine, take them away if we can get the FBI to put down their assault weapons. Now, looking back, there was no justification or probable cause for the raid. There was a frame job from the outset, a culmination of 30 years of unwarranted attacks. The main reason for wanting to disband this ministry, now get this folks, and I've talked about this for a better part of a decade, was its outspokenness about the truth, about the Vatican and its crimes against humanity, as well as the persecutions of Bible-believing Christians throughout history. Wow. I mean, is there freedom of speech in this country? I thought there was. Well, yes, folks. Remember this. The Vatican hasn't changed from the days of the Inquisition, and I know that for a fact because I worked in Rome for 7 years. I saw it with my own eyes. And today, 8 years later, after the raid, Pastor Tony Alamo remains in prison. He was sentenced to 175 years on bogus charges for violating the Mann Act. More than 36 children also from this ministry, basically kidnapped by the state, and my guest Bert Krantz knows a lot about this, have not been returned to their parents, when no child abuse claims have ever been proven. Also, the state, folks, is busy trying at this moment to steal away all the church's property. And it is what I call a three-pronged motive here by the state and the Vatican behind it to wipe this ministry off the face of the earth. However, I want to say this. Over the years I've covered this, the ministry is still there. They get a lot of hits on the internet. It is amazing what they're still doing, and I thought I'd bring Bert on again. Bert Krantz has been with this ministry for 40-some years. So, Bert, the first question I want to ask you, I said in my opening that that raid in 2008 was the culmination of, 30 years of unwarranted attacks? Am I wrong when I say that? And fill us in a little bit, because you've seen it from the beginning, so people understand really what's going on here.
You're absolutely right, Greg, and thanks for having me on. I'm happy to talk about this. When I was first saved, when I first came to the ministry in 1972, the ministry was already under attack then, and down through all those years, the investigation that the IRS used to, when they convicted Pastor Alamo of an IRS charge in the 90s, had been going on since the 70s, and they could never find any reason to bring a charge against the church. And so what they did at that time was they raided our property and in Alma, Arkansas, or up on Georgia Ridge near Alma, Arkansas, and they stole all of our books. And then they brought IRS charges against the church, against Tony personally. They said that the church personally belonged to Tony, and then without having books to prove all the expenditures, the vast expenditures on the ministry, on the literature, on all the ministerial aspects of the church, then they could accuse Tony of spending this money on himself, and they used that as a justification to take all the property that hundreds of people lived on and put them out into the streets in February of 1991. So this definitely isn't a new thing. And they did come on with weapons and stormed our property back in 91. I don't think they were as sophisticated weapons as they came up with in 2008, and they get more and more sophisticated, of course, as they go. And they definitely came on to our property in 2008 with automatic weapons with laser pointers on them pointed at children's hearts, scaring children to death. And if a pin had dropped, one of these adrenaline, surged, burly FBI agents could have just wiped out several children at the drop of a hat.
Just to make a point here, since gun control now is in the news because of that Orlando, what I call a false flag hoax. The point I'm trying to make, I talked to a couple FBI undercover agents that were assigned to bring your ministry down, and one of the things that one of them told me was that there were no weapons on your ministry. There was nothing. You guys never were armed. You weren't the problem. The only people I see carrying guns here and causing a mess are the FBI. Talk about that.
Well, that's true. Weapons have never been allowed in our church. If anyone was ever found having a weapon in our church, they were immediately expelled. They were put out of the church. That's always been the policy of our church. And they've always tried to make it seem as if we did. I know that these FBI agents, in both cases, the agents that came to Georgia Ridge in the 90s and in 2008, I know that they were briefed and they had seminars telling how dangerous our church was and that we did have guns, but they never have ever come up with one weapon to show that they confiscated or found from our property. And many times that they've raided, those weren't just the only times that they raided. They raided our church in Los Angeles in the 80s, and they stole children then. Or no, they didn't take children. What they did was they exposed children in early spring. Was very cold out, and they strip searched these children because there was reports, that they had been abused, and so they humiliated these children and strip searched them, found no evidence, and they found no weapons. They didn't even find a switch. They didn't even find a switch to hit anybody, or a knife, or a slingshot. Not a BB gun, nothing, not even toy. We don't even let our children play with toy guns.
Yeah, and you know what? I just want to make a point here because, like I said last week, my shows last week were interrupted by what's going on in Orlando. And I mean that because there was no reason for me to do anything more than to comment on that story because I knew people wouldn't be listening. And what I did, it really gave me a good background of what I want to say today, and that is there was one report that the FBI, prior to this, whether you want to consider it a false flag, whether you want to consider that it really happened, or whether it was just a hoax, the FBI did say something like there was a report that one of the news agencies found that stated that there was a order not to mention anything about Islamic radical terrorism. Don't say anything about the mosques. Leave these people alone. But here, the point I'm trying to make is, when you look at that statement, I ask people, do you really realize what they did to you guys and other Christian ministries now in this country? They are targeting our own people and protecting what I consider to be a huge threat in this country, and that is what they're doing with terrorism. And the terrorism doesn't come from Bible-believing Christians. Your thoughts on that?
The terrorism definitely does not come from Bible-believing Christians. Now, sometimes they do set up people that they, that they tag the name of Christian upon, like Jim Jones, or I think Charles Manson might have had some kind of strange doctrines or something. But they're all like they tag these different groups with the name Christianity, but Christians are followers of our Lord Jesus Christ, who never advocated any kind of violence or any kind of, definitely not terrorism. And so yes, the source of this terrorism is definitely very questionable, because I know that you can't believe what comes out of the mainstream media, and they have the people into this position where it's very hard to discern, is this the government? Is this a false flag? Is this really Islamists, or is it just some Arabs that they hired, that the CIA hired? What's going on here? And it puts such confusion. And, that's not a new thing either. You can follow that back. False flag ideas go way back into history, way back. And so they really have quite a scheme going on here.
Yeah, and I think that the point you made is well taken, because when I say, you see, what I had to do during that week of last week, and what I did with my shows, was to go just a bit deeper into the real problem. And for example, to understand Islamic terrorism, the way they present it, radical Islamic terrorism, at least from the Republican side, they say it. The Obama doesn't even mention the word. Is something that you have to understand how terrorism is now really the igniter for the Third World War they plan. And so when you look at how they orchestrate this, you have to go way back and figure out, where does this terrorism come from? And like I mentioned on my show, I was well aware of it in the 80s when I was almost killed in Italy during what they called a terrorist attack, blamed on a left-wing group that was opposing Ronald Reagan's visit to Rome. Now, I had no idea what they were doing. I thought it was actually a bomb in the beginning by this terrorist group. And what I learned was, and thank God I was still here to do that, was that our own CIA was involved in placing that bomb in that building and could have cared less if I was killed or not. And it was only done when there were two people in the building, so they didn't want to, they could have blown it up at 10 and a lot of people would have been killed. So what I'm getting at is that ignited me to understand where terrorism really comes from, that we orchestrate it, we fund it, we blame things on Islamic terrorism, and it's easy to get somebody that's poor, that has no money, to do these things. And America is being played as a patsy. Your thoughts?
Well, you don't have to look very far below the surface to know that the CIA has been involved in destabilizing governments and fomenting terrorism throughout the world for many years, all throughout my lifetime. And I know that before that, organizations that were the precursors to the CIA have done that down through the centuries. And I was just thinking recently how that the way the news media plays that Hegelian dialectic,
sure,
and the one against the other, and then of course the history is written from the current events, and the current events are so twisted. How can you trust the history? Well, that's not new either. The popular view of what really happened is always portrayed by those that are the conquerors, and so they write the histories, and so you look back throughout the histories and you can't trust what the whole society is based upon. And so we really have to look to God, and that's what the real true Christian does, is he realizes that he's totally dependent upon God, and that's our only hope out of this mess. Is we really need to pray about it. We really need for God to fight our battle for us.
Right. I mean, just using this last Orlando shooting as an example, I mean, when you try to get to the bottom of these things, which I did on my show, my first reaction was, why only me? I mean, come on, what is wrong with the picture here? And the picture is very simple. These could not exist in I pointed this out, very interesting. North Korea doesn't need to do this. The dictators in those countries already have total control. So first you have to have a country like ours, even many European countries that are semblances seem to be democracies, republics. So that's the first ingredient. The second ingredient is you have to have a government that has a political agenda opposed to the people they represent. Thirdly, you need a state-controlled media. Sounds like Russia in the Cold War, but that exists here today, Bert. And your story is so relevant because as people go and when they listen to this show, they will automatically go to the internet and check out everything. And I get comments like this: why are you the only one talking like this? Everybody else is talks about this ministry as being a cult, as being dangerous. Look at their pastor. He's dangerous. He's in jail. He's a child molester. Why are you the only one? And I said, well, listen, I'm not the only one. There are a number of people that talk about it. But you understand that the internet is controlled as well. That's where it gets interesting. And they have taken your ministry, taken Bible-believing Christians, and made them out to be the most heinous people in the world, and it is not true. And I wanted you to come on and talk about that because this goes back years. And you're talking about the 70s and 80s they were doing this. So just recap a little bit how it got to 2008 when finally they really came with guns blazing. Go ahead.
Well, in 2008, they got a hold, and the FBI actively went out. They got this scheme where they actively went out and sought people that had been put out of the church for one reason or another, or that had left the church, and they sought them out, and they bribed, they threatened, they bullied, they promised, they used all these different mind control techniques in order to get these people to lie about the church. The one particular witness that they used, they threatened that they would kill her father, and the other, they offered them all large sums of money, which they ended up getting. And they, of course, in the court, they testified that they weren't there for any kind of money, but they got millions of dollars. So, and not from the church, by the way. They only sued people in the church that had insurance, and so the insurance company settled because they didn't want to fight that kind of a battle. So yeah, they got these people, and it was all orchestrated by the FBI. Randall Harris of the FBI coached. They took these people to a place that they call Wellspring, which is the reincarnation of the Cult Awareness Network, which has been going on and combating Christianity and our church in particular since the early 70s. So back then they used to kidnap people out of churches and then just falsely imprison them in order to get them to deny Christianity. So see, really, the Christ is what they're trying to destroy. It's not because it's Bert Krantz or Tony Alamo. It is the gospel that is preached. It's the Christ within us that the devil hates, and he has a hold of many of the people within these organizations that control our government and the world government. And you know that it's headed out of the Vatican, out of Rome. So
yeah, and that gets to my point I wanted to make here. We got about 6 minutes before the break in this first half hour, and the point is, I said the main reason that they wanted to disband your Christian ministry was that you are outspoken about many truths in the Bible about wanting to lead a biblical Christian life. And the ministry was not afraid to send millions of copies of brochures, talk openly on the radio about the Vatican's crimes against humanity and its persecutions going on to this day. And the reason I latched onto the story, and probably wouldn't have if I didn't spend 7 years in Rome, is I know that's what they do. I saw it up close and personal where many Americans are wearing rose-colored glasses. When they listen to their lousy politicians who are lying to them, when they listen to most Protestant pastors today that have been bought out by the Vatican's ecumenical movement, and you guys are one of the last remaining ministries around. There's a few left, but each one that I talk to has, I don't think to the extent you guys have, but have been targeted as well. So I wish, you could comment on what you think the main reason is they came after you guys.
Well, for one thing, I really do thank God that you had that experience in Rome, that God put you into that position, because it is a rare thing that people see through the smoke screens that are going on. And there are very few people that are speaking out against it. Very few people see through it. And people that do see through it, a lot of them are they're so involved, they're so entrenched within it that they can't get out of it, or they'll be killed, or they'll lose their finances, or their lifestyle. And really today, that the exaltation of people, the exaltation of the pride of man is so promoted today with the Vatican, New World Order, United Nations, and then now it's like the homosexuals have conquered the world, and if you even say something that hurts somebody's feelings, it's criminal. So yeah, we have been outspoken, and we haven't picked on the Vatican. We have preached the gospel, but the gospel is laced and loaded with things against the world.
The interesting thing about this in Orlando is that they used a homosexual nightclub, and I listened to comments by the left-wing media, which is, to me, state-controlled media, and some of them had the audacity. You can see it on Huffington Post, you can see it on a lot of these, Politico mention these stories. They said Christians are no better than radical Islamic Muslims who go into a gay nightclub and kill them because of Christians' views on homosexuality. And my first point was, I don't think that Christians actually kill homosexuals. They have a belief that God made man and woman for a very good reason. And I believe that view you have a right to say that without being said this is hate speech. Your thoughts on why they used a homosexual nightclub to pursue this gun control, idiotic reason to disarm people who want to protect themselves. Go ahead.
Well, first, the truly Christian view of homosexuality is the view that's from the Bible. It's been the accepted view of society for millennia. And this new event or this new conquering of the world by these homosexuals to have risen up and create a world-class Sodom, like a Sodom that has gone worldwide. And this is anti-God. Their beef is not with me or with Tony or with anybody that expresses the views of the Bible. It's with God himself, because the Bible is written by holy men that were moved by God's Holy Spirit. And the history of the Bible, of Sodom and Gomorrah, it shows that God does not approve of homosexuality, and that's carried over into the New Testament. But when I say the history of Sodom and Gomorrah, you can go over to that area around the Dead Sea, and it is riddled with pellets of sulfur that were extinguished, when they got smothered in the ash from the rain of fire that came down upon that. It became the lowest point on earth. It's a dead salt area, and nothing grows there, nothing lives there. It's just barren desert filled with sulfur, and it's actually a volatile atmosphere over there.
Bert, I'll keep that thought because I want to take a break. I only got about 30 seconds here, but I want to come back in the second half hour and discuss openly the similarities of the Catholic religion, which you're familiar of, as I am. I grew up in it, as well as the Islamic religion and the Quran, and the similarities between those two, which both have nothing to do with anything to do with God in the true sense. And it's very, very interesting. And for lack of a better term, I'm not trying to slam Muslims or good Catholics. I just want them to understand what your hierarchy is all about. Back in 3 minutes on the Investigative Journal.
The book of Revelation says, "The spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ." This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today, so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy Reality News app. Get it now. Visit crosstheborder.org, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
I know you all want answers, and believe me, so do I, and I'll do my best to get them.
Despite Nicolas Cage's promise to do his best to get left behind rapture answers for us, don't hold your breath. Not everyone believes Left Behind is true prophecy. Some may even regard as conspiratorial the mainstream re-release of the Left Behind movie with actor Nicolas Cage portraying the main character as an attempt to further reinforce in the minds of all this perception of false prophecy in order to condition the masses for the play about to begin. If you want true Bible prophecy answers, get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. The author exposes the Latin rapture origin, the 7-year tribulation deception, true Bible revelation of Daniel's 70 weeks, the abomination of desolation, the restrainer, America in the Revelation, the image of the beast and the mark of the beast, and the truth about God's chosen people, and so much more about Bible prophecy. This book will shatter the Left Behind paradigm of future events. Get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.
Okay, welcome back for the second half hour of the Investigative Journal. My guest is Bert Krantz of the Alamo Ministry, and we're going over why Christians have been given a bad rap in this country, and I say it that way. And Bert, during the break, we were discussing the idea of Catholicism and Islam as being very similar in respect to many of the things that if you read the Catholic catechisms, the Catechism and the Quran, there's a lot of similarities. And my idea is that both have created a religion that worships man, not God. Your thoughts?
Well, that's absolutely true. I think I mentioned in the first half how the pride of man is so exalted today, and that everyone is like so complacent. They've arrived, and they're these religions actually conceal and hide the real purpose that God had in creating us, to make a creature that can partake in God's perfection, and that can only come from a personal relationship and total dependence upon God. And here people are it's all promoted that people should just stand on their own, and that anything to do with God is just so taboo and so old-fashioned. And there's all the different like science has proven there's no God, and anything that the morality of Christianity is just pushed to the side, and we just make up our own morality by society. And there's no real truth that's portrayed anymore, or that's promoted anymore. And in these different religions, that's the same organization that crucified the Lord Jesus Christ, that went to the tree where Eve was and said, "Has God said?" It's exactly the same thing. today. It's the spirit of Satan has created these churches, Mohammedanism religion, Catholicism, and really the Protestant religions. Many of those, like, well, let's say, for instance, Martin Luther, he was just a Catholic, and he saw the corruption of the Catholic Church, but he never strayed that far away from it. And so it was easy, really, for the Jesuit order, when they came in with the Counter-Reformation, they just wooed everybody back into this, through this unity promotion, and then just ostracizing everyone that wouldn't go along with it. And they got it down to a science to where any true Bible-believing Christian today is considered off the wall, just a nut.
Right, and unity in error is what they did here in this country now with most Protestant churches. I mean, go to any one of these churches now, and I went to one over last Christmas with my brother, and at the end of the ceremony, the priest gave the Luciferian, hook 'em horn sign. I'm going, oh, should I mention this to anybody? No, because they'll think I'm crazy. But what I'm getting at is, we walk a fine line when we discuss a subject like this. And the reason is, most people that'll listen to it will go, well, he hates Catholics. It's terrible. And I'm going, no, it's not that. What I'm talking about is that you Catholics out there, 1 billion strong, figure out what your Vatican's really about. And the same goes for the Muslim religion. I have nothing against them. What I'm saying is people of that religion don't just look at where this came from. How was it started? What is this idea going on now? And the point I'm trying to make is the powers that be, the Jesuit Hegelian dialectic, is demonizing you, not me, not anybody that's, a true Christian. They're not demonizing. They're saying, let's look at this objectively. What are they doing? Why do they want you to fight us when really there's no reason for it? And maybe you could say it better than me, but I see it to be a difficult way to, how would you talk to people? For example, and maybe I'll go on here. I know I had a pointer to make. I talked to several Muslims that came out of that religion and became true Bible-believing Christians, just like I talked to Catholics that came out. And amazingly, they agree with me when they say the Catholic religion and the Muslim religion are similar. And I said, yeah, well, maybe the Vatican created that religion. Go take it from there.
Well, it definitely is stated that the Vatican did create that religion, and both religions, in the sense that they distract people away from the truths of God, the teachings of Jesus Christ. We're not called to do good or to do evil. We're called to die. Christ died for us, and therefore we owe him our life. He says, lay down your life, pick up your cross, and follow me. If we will accept his word, eat his word, drink his word, breathe his word, take him into us, he says that we would die daily, and that his life will come into us, and he will dwell in us and work in and live and work in and through us by the power of the Holy Spirit. And so therefore, true Christians are going to do godly works. They're going to warn people that are on their way to eternal destruction that the way they're going is going to be a bad end for them, an eternal bad end. Now, true love, if I love you, Greg, and I see you that you're walking and you're going to get hit by a car, I'll do anything in my power to keep that from happening, even if I have to tackle you, and whatever. And so, man, what are you doing? You're pushing me around, No, I'm just trying to push you out of the way of this freight train that almost ran over you, So people are headed into a freight train. They're walking over a cliff in a herd. They're just walking right into hell. And our job is to go out into the harvest field and to pull them back, to bring them to the Lord. And we can't do that of our own. We don't have the power to give the life of God to anyone, because we're just people. But see, if God's word is true, and I know it is because I experience it every day in my life, he says he'll dwell in us, and his power, his glory, his deliverance, his wisdom, his love will be shed abroad through us to the world. And his love is to bring people to him. Now, the world says, no, God is bad. God's on some ego trip. We should do it our own way. We should rebuke God, and this is the way of the world. And this is really what the Catholic Church and what the Muslims are preaching today.
Yeah, and I did a story. This might be interesting to just mention. It doesn't get any press anywhere, but I did a story with a good friend of mine, an attorney who handles cases overseas, many civil rights cases, things that he works with independent groups fighting for freedom, for example, in the Cameroons in Africa. And we were discussing, and he's also been involved in genocide suits against the Vatican here in the States, representing the genocide victims of the Holocaust in Croatia after World War II. And John Levy is his name. He said, Greg, you there's a story going on in Nigeria that no one knows about. And I said, what's going on, John? He said, well, I represent a group in a nearby African state there. And you have about 10 to 15 million Christians in that country being surrounded now. And you're going to look at the next genocide going on in Nigeria, but no one even talks about it here. And what they've done is they've surrounded these Christians living in Nigeria with basically an attack that John says will happen very soon. And you're going to see death like you've never seen before there. And what I thought about your ministry is that you guys have been sending literature for 40 years to people in Africa, and many of them probably are people that you've communicated with, Bert.
Oh, yes, for sure.
And
we have. Go ahead.
You go ahead. Tell me about that. People need to know.
We definitely have been sending the gospel into Africa for decades now, and Africa. The Christians in Africa are far more awake in the Lord. They're far more spiritual and far more revived than America. America, the church has gone to sleep. There are so few, as you stated earlier, Christian churches that are speaking out, speaking the truths of God in the face of the opposition from the devil. But that's not true in Africa. In Africa, all over the continent, there's pockets of Christians that are really on fire, born-again Christians. They're definitely not lukewarm. So this is a horrible state of events if 10 to 15 million in Nigeria are being surrounded.
Oh yeah, and John knows what's going on in Africa because he deals with a lot of different cases there, taking them to the to the EU courts or to courts, of universal interest. And he said that this is something that people really need to know, how Christians are being targeted all over the world. And basically the Jesuits are involved in it, he said.
Yeah. Well, the Jesuits are definitely involved, and they're not. And they're picking on really just about anybody, all different kind of groups to create more confusion and kill it. They'll kill Muslims here and Catholics there, and Christians here, all over the place. So that because really they want to depopulate the world anyways, right? So the persecution of the Christians, though, is done in the minds of through media, through the government, regulation and laws, the discrimination, all the way that it's presented. That, like you mentioned earlier, how that the Christians, anybody that espouses biblical beliefs, is a hater, when really God is love. God is love, Greg. Everyone, even everyone knows that. God is love. And so his love, you've heard of tough love. Sometimes it's tough if I'm pushing you out of the way of a freight train. But believe me, the end result for all these people that attack Christians is going to be the same as people that attacked God's people down through the centuries, they will be destroyed. Not only will their civilizations be buried in the dust, but their souls will end up in the lake of fire.
And just so people understand, you did a 12, maybe a 15-minute video outlining what your ministry really does. Just go over it so people realize who you guys really are, because even today I still get emails. Well, who are these? They're a cult. They're underground. They don't want anybody to know what they're doing. In that 12-minute video, tell people how they can get it, and tell us right now what you really are all about and what the ministry is doing today.
Sure. Well, anyone that wants to can view that video, and I would recommend they go to alamoministries.com, and you can view that video. And essentially it tells how that our goal, the central goal of our ministry is the Great Commission, to bring the gospel to every creature on the face of the earth. This is called the Great Commission. This is what every Christian is called to do. So we have banded together as a group of Christians to do this, and we've found that by pooling our resources and by
working together, right?
Working together, we can reach out better. I don't have to worry about tomorrow's bill, because we work together, and that's all handled by one section of the church. And all the leftover money from the bills is put into literature, into the gospel, to send crews out to preach the gospel, to evangelize, radio time, whatever, any way that we can bring the gospel to the four corners of the earth. We're not trying to recruit people to come to our building. As you mentioned earlier, the federal government is working their best to steal anything that we own, and they've already taken large swaths of property from us, virtually everything. I don't believe there's any property left that we own. I think they've gotten it all.
And what about in Canyon Country in California? What's going on there?
Well, we are still in that property. You're right.
Right.
So,
right. But they're busy trying to get that as well. Right?
They're busy.
I've read
they
articles.
Never stop. The devil's not going to stop until the end, and neither will we. And we really need to. Our goal, it really is to follow the Lord Jesus Christ and His precepts and His statutes. Now, He says that we are to lay our life down, pick up our cross daily, and follow Him. And we do that together. And we found that in community, this is how the church in the book of Acts was formed. They laid everything they had at the apostles' feet, and distribution was given as everyone had need. And then what was left over could be used to evangelize the world, as Jesus' Great Commission stated. Now, we did have quite a few properties all over the country, and they did come in and steal all of those. And when we had them, we were able to reach out, but somehow the Lord doesn't need our property. He doesn't need our money. All He requires from us is ourselves. That's all we have really in this earth, is the choice. Am I going to pick up my cross today and follow the Lord Jesus Christ, or am I going to dedicate my life to being a fisherman or into some kind of sport or business or whatever endeavor people dedicate their lives to? Isn't it better to dedicate your life to where you spend eternity, to give everything we have to the Lord, so that He's promised to give us eternal life? We'll live and reign with Him forever. That's very profitable, and it's a very successful life.
I think one of the, now that you bring up eternity, I think one of the concepts that the Vatican has pushed, I think, I think if you took a poll of Protestants in this country, and they answered honestly, I don't think they believe there is an eternity or God. I think they just play this game that the Vatican plays, and in a sense, the Vatican wins because they've gotten their souls on the side of Lucifer. Correct?
That's correct. The Bible has been under attack more, so much recently in the last couple of decades. It's just unbelievable how much the veracity, the truth of the Bible has been attacked, and the Vatican is deeply behind that. You can Google that. Just look one after another thing that the Pope advocates or puts out in his decrees that, it's obvious that man evolved from apes, because science has proved that in the Vatican. In fact, it was Jesuit scientists that helped to really bring forth the theory of evolution. That was Pierre
Desjardins, correct.
Another one developed the Big Bang theory. So the Jesuits are deeply, and they have the biggest, they're more involved in astronomy than it. So, the sciences are really pushed by the Vatican, these sciences falsely so-called. And then also the Vatican has, will say, oh, there's no way that you can have forgiveness of sin through God directly. You have to come to the church, and you can't be a Christian unless you belong to the Catholic Church. And so many decrees they put out that are directed against the Bible, and they just advocate this, and then the governments push it, and they work together and draw the people into their world government, church conglomerate, United Nations, one new world order, one world government beast.
Yeah, and in fact, if you think about it, the Pope recently stated that even atheists can go to heaven. Right. And I'm thinking to myself, what he's really saying is that if you're going to go to hell along with me. And that's what he should say, because it's insane when you think of that thought. If you really understand and believe in God and the Bible, it is completely contrary to what the Bible teaches. And really, it opens its door. Look, there's no book in the world, there's no religion in the world that I've seen more open than Christianity, and I don't even consider it a religion. It's more of a open door policy to find Christ yourself. There's no,
not a religion at all.
No. And there's no, I don't have to do this, I don't have to do that. But what I have to do is really look into this and understand where this all begins. And that is what they don't want. They want you to worship the Pope. To hell with God,
Yeah, that's
and
right.
In a sense, all the things they came after you for, all the things we've talked about for years on my show and other shows that I've done to get your message out, we talk about every little thing. But the real point that I'm trying to make is they came after you because you are a threat to their power. If more people thought the way you did, they wouldn't have any power. Correct?
That's correct. And the thing that you mentioned about, the Pope saying that, atheists can go to heaven, homosexuals can go to heaven. If there's a homosexual that seeks God with a good heart, who am I to judge them? He says. Okay, so really, everyone believes there's a heaven. They bring, Grandpa went to heaven, all their Aunt Bessie, everybody went to heaven, but they want to make people think there's no hell, there's no devil, and what do you call
yeah, good point.
Freudian psychology has really come forth to do away with hell. It's all your mother's fault, or some unknown force. But there is a hell. We are accountable for what we do, and they want to take all accountability away from people and just soothe people's ego and their pride with all the flatteries of the world. He comes in with flattery. Everyone's so good, except the only people they wish that would rot in hell is the Christians. Isn't that something, Greg?
Yeah, I mean, I know, and I'll tell you what. Once you start talking in these terms, boy, I'll tell you, they will find a way to try and keep you quiet. And the reason I want your story to be told is that pretty soon we're not going to be able to tell it anymore. And what I mean by that is what they have planned for this country. If you really look at prophecy, and one of the things I've understood is that you have, all you people listening, you have a very short time to get right with your Maker. And it is coming quickly. It's not going to be 150 years from now. And your thoughts about where they're leading this country to, Bert?
Well, it's been brought up in the program today, and we've always talked about that, how they are leading the people into taking the mark of the beast, into this world government. And, Pastor Alamo put out a piece of literature many years ago called Satan Had to Have a Church and a Government. He had to have those things. And you can add to that a media. He's got to have a media to promote both. And that media exalts the one world church and the one world government, and they don't mind so much patriotic movements that come against the government, or even religious organizations that come against the government, as long as they don't attack that one world church. That is really the most important thing, that they have to have people believing that God is behind all this and that he is leading, and it's really Antichrist, and his seat is in Rome. That's right in the Bible. The city of 7 hills is the seat of the beast. It's the seat of the great whore who rides the beast. She controls the government agencies. This is so clear and so plain. So to follow into that and to go along with that, a person is going to pay eternally for that. And just like you mentioned earlier in the program, so many people, so few will stand against that. So few can see through it. It's just incredible. It's really incredible. And once you do see through it, as the Lord opened your eyes to that by that experience you had in Rome, you can't look back. You can't go back to that. How can you settle for that?
Yeah, it's really the way what you just said. Once you realize the truth about this story, your story, the story of really, I learned it through just being near the Vatican evil. I had to see the evil before I saw the good. And I would just recommend people read more about them. If you don't have any belief in Christ, do that. If you do, I'm telling you, you're in a lot better shape than a lot of people, and stand strong, because in the days that are coming, that is going to be your only salvation. Your thoughts, Bert? We have about 10 seconds.
Well, we really need Jesus to fight for us. That's what we really need. And if anyone's not saved, they need to accept him and ask him into their heart so they can be saved. And I want to thank you for having me on again today, Greg.
Okay, and we'll come on. I want to do another show in a week, because a lot of things came to mind in this show. And I have a good week, and we'll talk again next week, Bert.
All right. Thanks again, Greg.
Okay,
bye.
Good night.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening.